This reminds me of a conversation that I actually just read this book about a sexual abuse survivor trying to re-engage in healthy relationships. And I'm wondering, what advice do you give those who have experienced abuse, have experienced trauma, and is now trying to have a healthy relationship with sex that isn't a trigger
Yeah.
for difficult experiences that they've possessed?
Yeah. The first step that I work through with women who've experienced that, and it's so unfortunate that's a part of so many of our stories. It's
Yeah,
so disheartening, but it's to recognize that what happened was not sex. And so being able to delineate between what happened to you and the gift of sex that you have been gifted and you get to do in your marriage are two different things. And even though unfortunately it's the same behavior and things like that, that wasn't the, because you weren't in control, because you didn't have give consent, because you were assaulted or harmed in any way, shape, or form, that wasn't sex. That's not this. And a lot of people just struggle to see the difference between the two, and growing to the place where you see sex as something that you get to do and not something that you have to do. And then we
yeah,
go from there to be very vocal. Folks who have traumatic experiences have to carry the weight of having to be more vocal about their boundaries and their limitations, and also the work of discovering what that looks like, right? Because you have to know, if, for example, whatever your non-negotiable. So let's say, for example, I had a couple whose she experienced some sexual assault and oral sex was involved. The oral sex was a complete non-negotiable for her, but she did not tell him that during their courting,
mm,
dating, engagement phase. He did not find that out until the wedding night, and that he was looking forward to
yeah,
that. And it was and in her head, she couldn't process why he would want her to do something so degrading and this, that, and the third. But she wasn't upfront, or she hadn't really shared with him, because of her own battle with that trauma, how much that truly meant to them. So your first, outside of delineating between the two, trauma therapy is crucial for helping to disengage those triggers and becoming vocal about taking ownership in that sexual relationship, where you are not necessarily dictating, but being clear about where you are willing for this to go, but also being open to, if there is something that's off the table for you, talking with your partner, your spouse, like, what does this do for you? And how can we compromise to get a similar experience or a similar outlet or whatever that doesn't leave me crying and snotting, after it's
right.
all said and done. And in the same way, working with the partner, because being a partner, being a spouse to someone who's experienced sexual trauma is also a difficult walk to walk, because you don't want to intentionally be triggering, but you walking
Yeah,
alongside them as they're doing that work is necessary, but also just confirming, just to reiterate, anybody even watching this that's had that experience, that pleasure is your right as well. Despite what's happened to you, we're not going to further let the enemy rob you of the gift that God gave you. That was evil. That was not sex. This is something completely different. You still have the opportunity to create something beautiful and life giving that is 10 times as good as that was bad.